So in case you have not heard, Tiller-Hewitt has coined 2022 as the year of the leader. And there's been a lot of focus of late, and rightfully so, on our heroes, our healthcare heroes. And I have the distinct pleasure of working with another group of heroes. And those are the leaders at the helm of our healthcare organizations. And I get a front row seat where I have seen some incredible resilience, sacrifices made, unbelievable risks taken to protect and to serve the organizations that they manage and the communities in which they reside. And beyond that, I think what solidifies their hero status is their humility and their transparency to the lessons that they've learned, not just recently, but throughout their entire careers. And their willingness to share those lessons with us so that we can continue to get better. Because at Tiller-Hewitt, we believe that everyone wins when the leader gets better. Because when the leader gets better, everyone gets better. So to start the year of the Leader Salute, we launched our Leadership Lens podcast. And if you're a growth-minded executive, you are going to find this podcast incredible. Our guest, as a matter of fact, our very first guest is one of our panelists today, Dr. Mike Finley. And if you want to hear a very deep dive into physician leadership from another physician, you don't want to miss that podcast. But you can find us. You can either sign up on tillerhewitt.com/podcast, or you can find us on any of these podcast platforms. And then next we have what we're doing today, what we've launched today, our 2022 Leadership Webinar Series, which you can see we have a ton of great leadership topics. From today, we're going to start talking about tackling our 2022 leadership challenges. We're going to talk about the reasons why your growth strategies fail. We're going to talk about burnout, physician retention, and then we're going to wrap the year up with talking about the alarming and amazing lessons that we learned throughout the year. But I'm most excited today because of the two leaders who are on the line today who are going to share some incredible insight with you. I've had the pleasure of working with both of them. So I know many of you know of them. You may not know them personally because they're pretty legendary in the business. But let me first by introducing you to Mr. Devon Hyde. Devon is the CEO of a multi-hospital system in Lake Charles, Louisiana, Lake Charles Memorial Health System. I hope he'll share more, but Lake Charles has recently been coined the most weather-battered city in the country. So there's a great story behind that. But let me size Devon up quickly. He is an action-oriented change leader and visionary who never takes his foot off the gas related to strategic growth, physician relations, and innovation. Dr. Mike Finley is the system medical director and designated institutional official, which DIO is the acronym, for CHRISTUS Health. And he was the CMO for 20 years at St. Michael's Health System prior to taking on this corporate role. And Dr. Finley is all things physicians, engaging, mentoring, coaching, behavior modification. Maybe I use that in air quote, huh, Dr. Finley? Yeah. Teaching, leading. He is known in his health system for constant innovation. So, don't let his years of experience think he's gotten stale. This man is cutting edge, and why corporate now has taken him to lead this initiative across the entire system. But I honestly have never, ever witnessed an executive who has never, ever drifted from their mission. We hear about mission drift. This man quotes his mission constantly. I think he could spell it backwards. So as I spent time with these two leaders preparing for today, we identified 4 leadership challenges that they're going to really open for you today. So we're going to talk about creating a culture of resiliency and communication, and then relationships, including crucial conversations around engagement, recruitment, retention of physicians, staff, and market share. So Devon, how about you get us started talking about the number 1 challenge of resiliency?
Sure, Tammy. Thanks so much. Thanks to everybody on the webinar for joining today. And thanks to Dr. Finley. It's been a really terrific week in preparation. And as Tammy alluded, Lake Charles does have the unfortunate moniker of being the most weather-battered city in the United States. In 2020, we actually incurred the third worst natural disaster in the country at that time, which were hurricanes Laura and Delta. Laura hit Lake Charles, was a direct hit as a Category 4 hurricane, and then 6 weeks later, Delta hit as a Category 2. So catastrophic damage, widespread, more than $200 million worth of damage done to the health system. And I actually arrived in April, so post-hurricane and post-ice storm, right before a massive flood hit. And, as we really started to talk about how do we repair the organization, how do we begin moving forward, obviously resiliency of our physicians and our staff was at the top of mind. Oftentimes, the discussion around resiliency focuses on the tools and resources that staff need, their mental and well-being, health well-being. But this really went further than that, because we were trying to address not only the ability to care for the community, but to care for our staff as well. We were working with our local leadership, local government, for housing, for basic needs, for usable clinic space for us to be able to take care of a patient population that in Louisiana is historically underserved. And we accomplished this, I think, sort of one of the key takeaways from this, not only working closely with our human resources, we established a healthy workforce initiative, on-site EAP, open an employee health clinic, but really focused on making leadership personal and driving our investment in physician resiliency, leader resiliency, and staff resiliency as being one of the key focus. We spent a lot of times working with the front line, not only to ensure that they had the tools and resources needed to take great care of patients, but also how were they doing, how are their families doing, and what things could we put in place as a large health system. We're the second largest employer, right behind the school districts, close to 3,000 employees. So as we would go, obviously, we had broad representation from the community as a whole working within our health system. Might turn it over to Dr. Finley for some comments as well.
I'll get myself off mute. Thank you, Devon. I feel your pain from the coast and the hurricanes. We have, with CHRISTUS, we have hospitals all along the coast, Corpus, Lake Charles, Beaumont. We've had the similar experiences. We've also accepted many patient transfers over a 2-day time to evacuate hospitals. So my hat's off to you, and I know what it's like. It's a monumental task. What I want to talk about just a minute is what we have faced with over the last couple of years as our world has been faced with this pandemic, which I can't believe we're still talking about now, but we are. And our physicians, our staff, all of us are worn down. And resilience, I've never been more proud of a medical staff. I've never been more proud of a nursing staff that come to work every day. They wear masks. Their families have gotten sick. They've gotten sick, on and on and on. And if we ever have a time where we need to remember, we need to say thank you. We need to say thank you personally. Emails are okay and communication is okay, but now more than ever, we need one-on-one face contact with a mask on, and we need to thank them for what they're doing. They need to be, they are appreciated, but they need to feel it. Our staff too. We have a lot of issues with getting people to work, having staff. We have people that have never been in our hospital, as you have, that we're having to credential them in a 1-day period of time to work because of the shortages. It's a monumental task that we're all in this together, but the resiliency is amazing. We need to really thank them personally again. Realize that they have a home that they need to go to, just like Devon was talking about. How's your family doing? How's your community doing? We can't get to school. We can't get this, can't get that. So it is a tremendous honor to be in healthcare leadership at this time and actually see this happening. So I'm going to give you back to Devon. Do you want to talk about staffing?
Yeah, I think many of the things that we implemented, not only from a physician perspective, but fell right in line with staffing as well. We worked with local schools and really every constituent, every local legislator and community-based business to try and work to really begin the repairs to the community. Again, that work began an effort after Laura, and then Delta hit 6 weeks. So it was kind of a secondary blow. Kind of tagging on to one of the things that Dr. Finley mentioned, part of that resiliency is ensuring that both staffing and physicians feel appreciated. And that can be through a formal recognition process, which I know most of us have. But we also started town halls to you. Where a dyad leadership was going out onto the floors. And this really, I think part of the resiliency conversation cascades very nicely into some of the other things that we're going to talk about today from an engagement and communication perspective. But this was one of our really key endeavors that we've embarked upon, our town halls to you, which dyad leadership or dyad of executive leadership is in a department each week, meeting with not only clinic, ambulatory space, but also internal or inside the hospital, inpatient realm, and really all throughout. And then really adopting units. So making sure that we are ever present as we move through. And our organization is still under a lot of repair. We are not 100% back up and running. The other element of that is keeping people apprised, right? Making sure that we're minimizing the surprises, because we've had to move patient populations throughout the organization. We've had to move staff as one unit becomes available and another goes under repair. So really, to Dr. Finley's point, again, to echo that sentiment of that face-to-face personal interaction.
I echo all of that, Devon, and we need to realize that there's a tremendous amount of well-being that we need to be concentrated on with our people in our hospital. They get depressed, they get stressed out, they have post-traumatic stress symptoms, and we've got to have venues for them to feel like they can talk to people. Maybe even professional people come in to have little group sessions. But we talk a lot in the education world. I'm over all the residency programs in CHRISTUS. We talk a lot about these young learners in our hospital. They're 22, 24, 26 years old. They're first, second, third year residents. They're nursing students. They are taking people off of the ventilator that are their age. That impacts them greatly. I hear it. One of the things I've heard during this pandemic was our nurses that come from the FEMA, the RAC nurses that travel, and they're embedded in this all the time. They actually have been a source of great comfort for some of our residents. They've been there, done that. They talk to them. They put their arm around them. Hey, let's talk about this. Your palliative care teams are critically important at this time. So staffing is everything now, everything. And we were going to have staffing shortages in this country. We were headed that way. COVID just accelerated that. And so we've got to look at what are we doing in our business? How are we doing it? We're very inefficient, folks. I hate to tell you, I hope you are much more efficient than we are, but we've got to learn that we've got to divide things up better. We've got to make specialty teams that maybe my RN doesn't have to do every single one of these things, the triage and all, whatever. Maybe we can train an LVN or LPN or a mid-level provider to do things. I came from a long history of thinking that physicians could be trained up to do everything. They knew everything. They had all the knowledge and all that. That's nowhere near the same as it is now. We have way too much knowledge. We're teams. So this team has to be formed with multiple people. The sepsis bundle is perfect. Multiple things on sepsis bundle. You can't depend on the doctor to know everything and get everything done. You can't depend on the triage nurse to do it all. You've got to divide and conquer and make this a well-oiled machine where you have highly trained people communicating and it just goes seamless.
I love it. I love it. When I think about resiliency, I'm not going to lie, that word kind of confused me a little bit. Like, what exactly are we talking about when we all started talking about this as a number one leadership challenge? And the best way for me to remember resilience is being able to withstand an unusual amount of stress. And, we look at the military, we look at engineers that build bridges and planes, and that's how they build it for. They build it for these stressful catastrophe kind of level breakdowns. And I think if we think about people that way on how we can help support them and build them for this stress, we won't have, nearly the problems that we're having today. And I did recently read a book, 7 Hidden Reasons Employees Leave. 79% of 200,000 employees said that they quit their job because of a lack of appreciation. So both of you talked about really showing your appreciation. A lot of people say, please, I'm going to listen to you guys tell me how to appreciate my employees. 79%. And maybe you should look in your organization if you're not doing, post resignation interviews to find out why they left. So I love that, guys. That was awesome. Well, Dr. Finley, how about we move on to the second challenge, kind of your thing about engaging physicians and staff.
Thank you, Tammy. I of 22 years of CMO, medical director kind of stuff, almost, I would say 95 to 100% of things I deal with negative are communication issues. So how we communicate is everything. I'm a one-on-one kind of person. I really like Devon's, the town halls at your place, the smaller town halls. It's personal. If this is not a personal industry, I don't know what is. Us in healthcare, this is very personal. So personal communication. We're way too much on texting and emailing, and yeah, that's kind of texting, especially quick and all that. But even though we fist bump instead of handshake now, well, we've got to get out and communicate in person. I like to go to the doctor's offices and see them there. They hate coming to my office. They can't stand it. And so I like getting out and going to their office. It's less time for them. I'm less disruptive. I get to see their pictures on their wall instead of them looking at what little I've got here. And I get to ask them, hey, I didn't know, if this happened to me. I didn't know you were the most outstanding resident teacher in your residency program back when you trained. Oh, yeah, well, not many people know what that is. Well, I know what that is. So, learning that little bit about them and the kids' pictures, it's a big deal. But communication in less of the large groups is key. And I know Devon's talked about it. I know you do this, and I know you think, gosh, I just can't spend that much time. Well, you can't not spend that much time, in my opinion. So, Devon?
Yeah, that's a great point, Dr. Finley. So the organization, Lake Charles Memorial, had 2 CEOs in the past 31 years. So I inherited an organization that had very long tenured leadership. And obviously there's some great things that come along with that. And there's some things that, having spent my career in a variety of different healthcare systems, from urban to rural to, rich, poor, all those different things, you learn a lot. And so you bring a different playbook. We actually conducted our first physician engagement survey in 2021. And I'll pause for dramatic effect, because I'm sure a lot of people on the webinar are scratching their head saying, that's impossible. How can that be? I don't have an answer for that, transparently, but that was certainly the case. The good thing is that for overall, particularly in light of everything the organization, staff and physicians had been through, it was predominantly positive, but definitely we were lacking a physician outlet. We'd conducted employee engagement surveys, and there was a fairly robust process there. But having worked with Tiller-Hewitt at 2 different organizations, I knew that the fast track way to really sit down and engage our physicians in proactive dialogue was to create the dyad models that we've used previously. And so we started out with 6 modalities. And again, initially, I think the conversation, or my thought was, we will engage Tiller-Hewitt to deploy the physician liaisons look at growth, look at volume. And what we uncovered was really the first several months of this engagement has really been focused on kind of going back to physician resiliency, engagement of our physicians, providing a proactive and healthy outlet to have these discussions. I think one of the best parts about it, and again, feedback from not only our engagement survey, but just in conversations with physicians, was lack of accountability with administration. And these dyad models provide bilateral accountability that engage our doctors, not only to hold us accountable, but in those conversations, it gives us the opportunity to create that accountability in both directions. And as we've uncovered, and as we'll kind of get to in patient retention, there was really significant opportunity for us. These meetings are face-to-face, again, going back to making leadership personal. To Dr. Finley's point, we go to the other hospital campuses. It's not necessarily come to the administrative boardroom for these conversations. And initially, there was a lot of hesitancy because the perception of administration, there was not a lot of proactive engagement with our physician population, as well as staff from the C-suite. And so we've worked really hard to overcome the perception that administration is here to deliver bad news. The reality is we're coming to share good news. We're coming to share strategy and alignment activities.
Yeah, I think you can never think that you know everything about your organization. And when you walk through or when you listen to things from our providers and our nurses, what can I do to help you? What can I do to help you do your job? I can't believe how many times we've gone through these things, but you'll be surprised. I am surprised. I get these relatively simple things. Why hasn't someone made sure that the fax is printed down here instead of around here? And somebody has to bring it in. Those kinds of things seem really small, but when you have to do it 30 or 40 times a morning, it just drives people crazy. And they don't have the legal size or the regular size paper. Somebody brought the legal size paper and things like that. So I consider noise as something that, I'm going to make noise about what I'm going to do for you. People don't really pay a lot of attention to that. You just go ahead and do it. And don't brag about it. Just wait until they say thank you. And, yes, sir.
No, Dr. Finley, I was going to say from a certainly both physicians and staff perspective, as through our town hall CU, through these dyad meetings, it has given us and me as a CEO that's new to the organization. I have new leadership within the organization as well. It's given us the opportunity, to build credibility within our medical staff and our employee staff. That administration, even if it is ensuring that 8.5 by 11 paper is loaded into the printer as opposed to legal, that we hear, that we're responsive, and that we're being proactive in that. And again, I know for everybody on the webinar, you think, yeah, absolutely. This isn't rocket science, a lot of this, but it really comes down to the granular execution and the relationship development that takes place through these methodologies. And it's not easy to get a group of 10 cardiologists to sit around the table the first time with the new leadership team. There is a lot of hesitancy. And as what we learned is there was, we'll call it pent-up demand for items and opportunities. And we've worked collaboratively with our physicians through that initial pent-up demand, which fortunately has led us into the strategic conversations.
I want to move to shortages. We have staff shortages, we have physician shortages, we have everything. But I think I want to go back to, we have to learn to work more efficient. I want to give you an example. We have a retail pharmacy in our building, and we talked for 3 or 4 or 5 years about, wonder if we could do home meds where people get their medications from the retail pharmacy brought to the bedside. And I thought, people aren't going to really want to do that. They have Walmart or Walgreens or whatever. They're going to want to get it when they go home. A couple of years ago, I got to test out our hospital and I was in the hospital and had a procedure. And the going home process was so broken. I could not believe it. I couldn't believe it. So when I came back, lo and behold, they were working on these going home meds again. And I was now a champion for this. And I'll tell you now, we have patients, many of our patients, 30% have medicines delivered at their bedside in a timely fashion. They leave the hospital with their medicine. They don't have to go home to send someone to the pharmacy, Walmart, whatever. Invariably, there's something wrong with it. My medications, 5 of them, two of them were wrong, and one of them was a duplicate. Mine, and so we've got to learn to work smarter and make smarter teams. You can't have a hospitalist for every single task. You can't have an RN for every single task. I go back to look at what you're doing and put experts in it that maybe work at their top of their license, but they're not an MD or RN or whatever. So we got to get this better. Devon?
I would say, particularly Dr. Finley, not only do we not have somebody to do each and every function, but utilizing technology, and whether that is medication delivery to the bedside, whether it is handheld devices. We could have a 6-hour conversation on available technology in respective organizations. But one of the things that we're doing is looking across the enterprise of how do we utilize technology in better ways to address the shortages that unfortunately we inherently have. There's no getting around it. And there are methodologies out there that we're looking at capitalizing on that reduce friction, reduce practice, noise and irritation, and perhaps streamline the process. So as opposed to 3 people having to do it, 1 person can do it.
Yeah, I just want to add a couple things. One, to what you just mentioned, Devon, that you're looking at this technology. If everyone isn't looking at ways that they can automate scheduling, they're missing out. Devon personally Devon, I hope you don't mind if I share, 19 FTEs down in his patient access area. Well, we're going to implement a system that for every 100,000 orders that come in, it could actually reduce that by 6 FTEs. So we're not looking to eliminate positions. We're looking at filling the positions that we have, and so that we can accommodate patients. So technology, if you're not on the technology bandwagon, you are going to definitely be left behind. And Dr. Finley, I remember when we launched the hospitalist onboarding program, you brought us in and we started interviewing doctors, talk about that one-on-one where they're being heard. Dr. Finley literally had 2 hospitalists who had already had already submitted their resignations, rescind their resignations because they're like, yes, Dr. Finley finally got everyone on board to listen to what our challenges are and remove these barriers that are making it so difficult. So you have to get down, on the ground level, leaders out there, and understand what's going on. People are too busy to even stop the bus long enough to tell you what's broken. They just mow around it or try to figure it out. And one thing that we ask in every physician interview is, do you feel like you're operating at the top of your license, meaning doing only what a doctor should do or only what a nurse practitioner should do? And then as we talk to nurses, the same. Devon, I will say that your physician survey was the best of all the surveys we've ever done. If physicians really feel like they practice at the top of their license there, they're not rooming patients or doing clerical work or calling in orders that a staff should do. So that was super good news for your medical staff. Congratulations for that.
Tammy, can I say something?
Yes.
I want to say, when Tammy and her team came in to interview our hospitalists, I would have bet a whole lot of money that she might get 6 or 7 out of our 25 or so, maybe. Over 2.5 days, they literally got going. They literally called to find out, when can I get an appointment? I'm not on the list. Can I get in? Every single one of them.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not Dr. Finley, you finally got this. It's maybe somebody else listened to them a different way, and then we followed up.
Yeah. Well, that was fun. I mean, it just goes to show you that everyone wants to be heard. It doesn't matter. But those are physicians. Everyone wants to be heard. That's why those forums that you're doing, Devon, are so important. And it does remove the noise. You know, everyone thinks they'll call me if they need me. And Devon, you gave the great speech when we launched the onboarding program last week, you know, which you can talk about on the physician retention piece. But there are all these myths that everyone thinks no news is good news, and it's not true. No news is when you know is the beginning of your organization going off the rails. All right, let's move on to number 3. Devon, I'm going to have you start this around patient retention, or what we all refer to as care consolidation.
Sure. So it's interesting as I've come aboard and conducted an analysis with our leadership team across the enterprise, and we have some pretty significant capital needs. We have a latent and legacy EMR here. To not get sued, I won't disclose which one it is, but it does not work very well. It is an enormous physician dissatisfier. And as early as possible in my interview process, when I started interacting with physicians, our EMR system is one of the identified as one of the greatest challenges for us. And so then it becomes, okay, how do we go about paying for that? We are a sole community-based hospital, so we have no corporate ownership. So I didn't have somebody to go and say, hey, I need between $35 and $80 million for a new EMR. Let's go ahead and write a check for that. And so really started looking at, okay, how do we fund that? And I frankly didn't want to go to bond market for it. So how do we fund that? Well, we started looking at where our volume was going. Again, in partnership with Tiller-Hewitt, helping us dive into our metrics. And the number was shocking. It was over $100 million a year in revenue was leaving our system for services that we provide. Now, after I got up off the floor, after hearing that number, we started talking about, okay, what are the challenges? Why is this happening? And we learned awareness. Awareness was one of our biggest challenges. Access. I can't tell you how many times as we started digging in and interviewing our internal medicine and our family medicine physicians, who are fantastic, are enormously supportive of the organization, said, the reason I don't send to subspecialty X is because I can't get in. I can't get my patients in, yet the orthopedic group, the cardiology group, the independent group that is eating what they kill across town is much easier to access. And so and we are really just kicking off, in full transparency, just kicking off our DPOs. They got started out this month. But again, having utilized Tiller-Hewitt at 2 different organizations, I know how this cadence goes, where the DPOs go out, they start uncovering issues, they bring those back. Myself, the rest of the leadership team, in complement with our physicians, start to address those issues. And all of a sudden, those floodgates open. And initially, there's a tidal wave of volume, and you stumble, and you can't necessarily accommodate it all. And then you continue to refine the process, and you then become much, much, much easier to access. But those are some of our 2 biggest issues: was awareness of the subspecialties, awareness of the procedures, and then the access component. And that access component can be physician preference, can be staff preference, it can be latent organizational practice, which is also part of the case here. There's about 9 other bullet points that I could go through for why we're difficult to access, but I know how much time we have, so I'll jump over to Dr. Finley.
Thank you, Devon. I need to quit putting myself on mute because I forget about it every time. But I can't tell you how many times in my career that we've thought, okay, we can solve that outmigration. We bring new specialists in, and it just doesn't happen. So patterns of referral are very, very many times very ingrained. They are relationships. It's all about relationships. They are knowing that when my nurse or staff picks up the phone or does the computer and refers someone, it's done. I don't have to get on the phone. I don't have to explain it. I don't have to do all that stuff, because they will go to the pathway of least resistance. They want good outcomes. The physicians who refer want good outcomes. They want their patients to come back to them, and this is probably the biggest key, and say, doctor, thank you so much for sending me to that neurosurgeon for my back. So it was so good. Maybe that they didn't operate on me, but they helped me. They did this, they did that. They treated me. So they give all the credit to the referring doctor. And when that happens, that's solid gold right there. And so some of the physicians we get in here that think that, oh, there's 35% out migration, I'm going to be busy first week. That's just not it. It doesn't happen. So once you have these relationships, they are good. I've been through all kinds of ups and downs with it. The numbers look this way, the numbers look that way, and you bring it in, it doesn't happen because no one factored in the emotional part of it. And if we talk about staff, our staff, we are just like you. We have a very difficult time staffing our hospital. Many of our staff, our nurses, our respiratory therapists especially, have gone to travel, and they're making 3 to 4 times what they were making here. They've gone to our PRN staff here, which means they might or might not work again at some point. And so I've got these people left. And that's a very hard question. We personally don't bring our staff back as travelers here. We're not going to have a nurse who just left come back and work with another nurse that they are from here making 3 to 4 times as much. That's a morale killer. Yeah. So we have done things. We've done things that you've done, I'm sure. We've done bonuses. We've done retention bonuses. We've done long-term bonuses. But we, as an industry, cannot pay 3 to 4 times the going rate and perpetuate we can't do it. It'll break the industry. So that's another one of COVID's challenges. Again, we were going to face staff shortages, but COVID has rapidly magnified that. Devon?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tammy.
I was just going to say some of that we might be able to say for recruitment and retention, the last challenge about what we're doing around staffing, because I know that a lot of organizations are struggling and trying to get innovative with how they can recruit and retain great staff. So around physicians and then the learners in the organization. But one thing I wanted to add to the patient retention, what we're talking about is fencing in the family, right? Keeping patients within our organizations. And Devon spoke to all that was uncovered in that, in the data that we found out. So we have to remember there's kind of a hierarchy. So data tells you what is leaking and by whom. He was talking about some of the multi-million dollars was coming from a very loyal employed primary care physician. And so and Devon talked about there were access issues with the other prior. He wants to keep it in, but there are access issues and he got tired of telling someone and no one was fixing it. But what the interviews do is when you take that data, you uncover the why, and then you can fix it. So the last thing you want to do, and Devon would never do this and never has and didn't in this instance, take that data and beat the doctors up with it. No, he went out to uncover and understand why. Please tell me why you're having to send these patients out. And then we found out all of the issues. So, and then also new specialists, when we talk about retaining our patients and keeping business locally, everyone needs to understand that just because we recruit a new specialist and we take it out and say, hey, Dr. Finley, meet Dr. Hyde, he's the new neurosurgeon, that we expect Dr. Finley to immediately shift his referrals from a proven commodity, a proven physician relationship that he's had with another neurosurgeon for years. We can't undermine the physicians that way. We have to show quality outcomes and let the doctor get to know the new specialist. That would be making a physician relationship tank very quickly. And then Devon mentioned a DPO. That's Director of Professional Outreach. That's the physician liaisons who just hit the streets last week to go out and uncover more on the why we have this leakage. So I just wanted to jump in real fast and talk about that as we focus on how we keep patients within our system.
Yeah, Timmy, that brings up a really good point, because data is driving these conversations. And I'm going to maybe jump to the third, to mindfulness. And this is perhaps mindfulness with a little bit of an edge to it, because as we've engaged, if you ask, I've never met a physician who didn't tell me that they were very busy. Regardless of the productivity numbers, they will always tell you that they are busy, 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 taking great care of patients, and sometimes can't see anymore. In this engagement, one of the things that we've done is really open the curtain, peeled back the layers a little bit. And particularly with one of our specialty groups, we have two physicians that there is plenty of pathology in Southwest Louisiana, would tell you they are busy, busy, busy. They can't possibly see anymore. And they are at the 16th and 19th percentile productivity, respectively. And then as a group, we showed them how few referrals that group is actually getting, not only from our employed group, but within the community as well. And it's taken a little bit of time for them to truly digest that information, but it's also taken us saying, this is unsustainable. We cannot continue to pay you the salary that we're paying you, plus all the other items, if you're going to function at the 16th and 19th percentile. It is, we're not only can we not, we're not going to. And I would love to tell you that has resulted in immediate physician behavioral change, staffing change, but it's definitely out there. And that conversation is cascading across the organization, that we are looking at it because, again, as a sole community provider, as an independent community hospital, we cannot have our employed primary care, employed internal medicine, employed specialists not functioning at the top of license, not functioning in a productive manner, whether that's a scheduling issue or just a physician preference issue, mid-level issue, any of those number of things that we're uncovering. But that data is very poignant and is driving those conversations.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I mean, to have salaries up here maxing out and then have their productivity down here. And another thing, Devon, that you uncovered was the formula for their productivity was kind of skewed. There was stuff in there thrown in there that shouldn't have been, that made physicians look like on paper they were busier than they were. And then in the defense of some physicians, they've been screaming inefficiency, and no one has rescued them. So, we can't set our physicians up for failure, put them in the practice and then say, hey, hope you grow and grow fast. Let us know if you need us, kind of thing. And then say, oh, well, we recruited a real dud. They're on the 16th percentile when we've not done our part.
Absolutely.
And I know that all that's going to change at your organization. Well, let's move on to the fourth and final leadership challenge, and then we're going to open it up for questions. But let's talk about, I think, Dr. Finley, this is yours to start with, but recruitment and retention is a big one, as you were just talking about. But let's start with physicians, move to staff, and then what do you mean by learners?
Well, thank you, Tammy. We all recruit our medical staff. We're in the midst of a medical staff turnover that we knew was going to happen because baby boomers were at the end of their careers, but now COVID has accelerated retirements much faster. So we all are recruiting physicians, all kinds of them, primary care specialists, et cetera. We have to get the right people into our facilities, into our towns, into our communities. I think it's key that people you recruit want to live in your community. They want to be a part of your community. Sometimes we can't do that. Our hospitalists may travel from Dallas to here or wherever. Our ER doctors may, but you have to put up with that some. But you need to try to populate your community with what works in your hospital. The other thing that I strongly believe is new physicians out of training are just, and I can tell you this, I was a residency director for years. New physicians out of training are just ready for the next step. The goal of a residency training program is to get physicians out who are not dangerous. And then they come in and they have their whole next step. They have to learn the medical staff, the community, the hospital, and that's called onboarding. They onboard to everything. They need a mentor who can help them begin to belong to our profession, someone who respects our profession. They're not really ready to take, a hospitalist is not ready to take 20, 25 patients a day. but yet we tend to do that pretty quickly. So they have to have support, or you're going to wind up spending 3 years of money. They're going to leave after the contract. You just trained them to do a little better, and they're going somewhere else. So it's a journey. It's a big journey. And when we retained, and Tammy said 2 of our hospitals, we retained 4 that were going to leave us.
Oh.
They signed new 3-year contracts, and they became much better at us. We really became very valuable to them and them to us. But I think you have to look at, if you have to look within yourself. And I know every one of us has been at this point. I'm interviewing a potential medical staff member, and I got this little voice that says, this just doesn't sound right, doesn't feel right. But this other voice says, gosh, I really need this position. And we can probably help this doctor we can help them communicate better. Well, let me tell you, folks, if they hadn't got it by now, by the time you're seeing them, they're 30 years old. They've been through all kinds of training, and I've failed at this. You cannot retrain them. So don't think you can. So I'm on a soapbox here, so I'm gonna give it to Devon to kind of calm me down.
No, it's such an interesting conversation about physician recruitment, because there's an inelastic demand for physicians. There are more physician openings than there are newly minted doctors each and every year, and it's a competitive process. We're all vying for the same specialists, in some cases the same primary care, internal medicine. I think going on to, really tag teaming Dr. Finley on something you mentioned was the onboarding process. I will say that I know I've been guilty in my career where we onboard we hire a new physician, they show up with their family, they show up with their spouse and kids, and we give them the keys to the office, we give them a badge, we introduce them to hopefully a couple of people, we show them where physician parking and doctor's dining is, pat them on the shoulder and say, well, let us know if you need anything. And like I said, I won't assume that anybody on this webinar has ever done that, but I can tell you I've been a part of organizations where it is almost systemic that those sorts of things happen. I've had a new neurosurgeon show up on a campus and nobody knew he was there because the medical group and the hospital administration were bifurcated under the leadership structure. So these things happen. And talk about an expensive hire, talk about an expensive departure. If you're not re-recruiting constantly, if you're not touching base at a minimum every 30, 60, 90, 180 days into their new venture and up into 18 months, ensuring that the family is engaged, ensuring that what you've talked about with the physicians and how you sold the opportunity is clear, then it's very easy to experience physician turnover, because I think, and Tammy may have mentioned this, or I know I've heard her say it, that every new doctor gets 100 solicitations, a minimum of 100 solicitations for a job that's out there. So they have opportunities, and if you're not creating the right narrative, the transparent narrative, the good, the bad, the ugly as part of your recruitment process, I think you're doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah, I echo certainly what Devon said. I believe they need to feel your mission. You need to bring people in who believe in your mission, and that can be one of the reasons they work. Every one of us likely has a variety of nursing students, medical students, respiratory students, pharmacy tech students, residents in our hospital on any given day. You need to know who's in your hospital learning to be what they're going to be. And you need to recruit them. You need to meet them. You need to get an idea of, hey, we're gonna need nurses, so let's recruit them from here. You need to know who's in medical school from your area. And on certain times like Christmas or holidays, they come home. You need to invite them to a little banquet or get together. Let them meet each other. They love to talk about their medical schools with each other. Love it. And if you have put them together, they go, oh, by the way, the hospital brought us here. That is an unbelievable captured audience right there.
Yeah, it's we all celebrate Respiratory Week. We celebrate Rad Tech Week. We celebrate obviously nursing, but how often are we pausing to say, let's get the learners in our organization, let's get the respiratory therapy techs, let's get the med techs, let's get whomever it may be, together and understand, are we meeting their needs? Are we a viable entity for them to come and work for, and engage them early in that process? Some of those programs are 6 months, some are a couple of years. And so you'll have these individuals that are impressionable, this is where they're doing their clinicals or their rotations or where they're spending a large portion of time for a couple of years. And if we're not proactively engaging them in that recruitment process, just like we have a family medicine residency program. We've started that engagement process with the PG1s, 2s, and 3s, and to ensure that they know who we are and that we're addressing their needs on a quarterly basis as a residency group. We're going to launch, and this was my aha moment in Dr. Finley in the preparation, the couple of calls that we had was, what are we doing organizationally to ensure that the learners within our organization feel valued, feel appreciated, and that we're proactively seeking the top talent that exists within those consortiums.
Hey, Devon, will you talk about the gift that was given to you by a leader when you were a young leader?
I sure will.
Recruitment.
I sure will. I like how you've labeled it a gift, because it was a really terrifying time in my career. So just set the stage very quickly. I was a brand new associate administrator in Poplar Bluff, Missouri. There had been a wholesale leadership change. CEO, COO, CFO, CNO, all had exited or were exited within 90 days of my arrival. I promise you it had nothing to do with me, at least that's what I tell myself. And our division president, who is one of my favorite people on the planet now, but she came to me and said, in essence, if you want to stay the associate administrator here, you are going to do physician recruitment. I had no experience in physician recruitment, or very, very little experience. And we were able to recruit 26 doctors to Poplar Bluff, Missouri in 18 months. And Tammy, I went back last night. 14 of those physicians are still there. And I believe the ones that have left, 6 were retirements. I'm and this was in 2008 and 9 or 9 and 10. So it's been a little bit of time. Ultimately, what we really figured out, and when I started recruiting, and I did the soup to nuts, screening resumes, calling candidates, all the way through organizing the on-sites and extending the offers. Initially, I went after people that were my age, that were right out of residency, and ultimately figured out that those were not going to be the individuals, the candidates, frankly, that were going to look to sign contracts. And we really worked diligently to figure out the formula of what type of physician was going to come to Poplar Bluff, Missouri. And there were some specific characteristics as far as where they were in their career, where they were practicing, what they were doing. But it became, we were able to be very, very successful in that. And so my point to that is make sure you're asking the right questions. One of the questions, being in a rural community, and I still ask candidates this day, is how do you want to spend a Friday night? And if they say to me, I want to go to the hottest new restaurant, I want to order a really nice Cabernet, and then we're going to go see a concert or a show or something like that, I just inherently, I may think, okay, this may not be the right candidate for this environment. If they say to me, I want to go watch my son or daughter do a sport and then come home and throw a steak on the grill or something, and demonstrates that they're interested in that family time and that a different pace of life for them is where they are, you will have a much greater success through that. I think finally, I know we're running out of time, but finally, one of the greatest compliments that has ever been paid to me was by a nephrologist that's still at Poplar Bluff, Missouri, is he said, the opportunity here was exactly as you described it. I feel like there were no surprises when I came on board. I knew what was going to be good, what was going to be bad, what I wasn't going to like. And so, again, that we're all vying for the same candidate pool. We obviously want to put our best face forward. We want to make ourselves and our organizations as attractive as possible. That level of transparency and honesty will pay dividends.
That's good. I think transparency is always going to be our currency. So thank you guys very much. Dr. Finley, do you have anything? We do have a couple questions that have come in that I was going to ask.
Yeah, I would like to address, there's a question about assigning mentors. Is it
Yes,
okay if I
yes.
address that?
Please, will you repeat the question though?
It says, when you assign mentors, does it have to be a physician to physician, ? Same specialty, ? And this is me personally, just because this is the way I feel. I think I would prefer physician to physician. I don't think it needs to be same specialty. If it's a nurse practitioner, I think it needs to be a nurse practitioner. I think it needs to be a seasoned professional member of the medical staff, even retired, especially retired. Someone that gets it, someone that is a professional. When my son became a nurse practitioner, I thought I would be the best mentor for him. Because I went to nursing school with him. He was a challenging child. And after he failed to be a professional fisherman and a game, this and that and the other, he became a nurse. So, but when he was assigned his mentor in the ER, that became the most critical piece of what he's become now. And he's been down there 7 years. So I think it's
Wow.
who you assign. They got to really want to do this.
Yeah. When we assign mentors, also just to add to that question, we also look at personal interest. It's not a teacher. It's a buddy system, but we don't want to call it your new buddy at work. So, look for common interest. Do both of them have families, or are both of them young single professionals? So you kind of match that interest up as well. It helps make the roots deeper.
I would ensure they're not in the same specialty as well. I would ensure they're not in the same specialty.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think what you guys are hearing is one size doesn't fit all. Know your medical staff. Know who is a good a mentor who will, really help ground them into the community and help their family. There's a question that's coming in regarding physicians. Can you speak to your onboarding plan, and also who takes on the accountability responsibility of the retention plan? Who wants to take that?
Devon is just starting that, so you take that, Devon.
Sure. So it was interesting when we rolled out our onboarding plan last week with Tiller-Hewitt. We probably had 60 different leaders in the room. Obviously, as the executive chair, I take ultimate responsibility for it, but it takes, pardon the pun, but it takes a village, right? If we're all not working collaboratively to ensure that the physician and their family have the best onboarding experience possible, then we have failed. And that can be from nursing units to the OR manager to SPD, materials, CNO, CEO, CFO, COO. It is really a broad spectrum. Now we have an executive vice president of physician practice management that from a clinic perspective is involved, and his team is involved in ensuring that onboarding plan. But really the accountability is all in as we're moving forward. We will talk as a leadership team and as a management team as a whole as to where we are with that physician onboarding, really beginning from the day the contract is executed and probably even just a little bit before that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. In fact, at Lake Charles, they changed physician onboarding program, that name, to provider integration program, because onboarding is, people get that confused with orientation, and orientation is a small piece of a year-long onboarding program with a mentorship and family integration. So it has to have a senior champion or else it could fizzle. And then it has to have a very routine cadence with a standardized checklist that goes across the organization. And again, the senior champion is the one that is the glue to make sure that it's a priority initiative in your organization, because really this is about retention. It's not about recruitment. We always say long-term retention starts way before and goes way beyond recruitment. Recruitment's just the wedding. The retention's the happily ever after. And so that's why it takes a senior champion to make this a very important initiative, that to have a retention culture.
Hey, Tammy, there's a question.
Well, guys, I think go ahead.
There's a question
Yep,
up about, and I can certainly relate to this. when we're working 60 to 70 hours a week, how can we afford the time out in the field and rounding on the units? I feel that pain. You just have to look at what can you cut out? What is a value that's not value that you can cut out? Because if we're not rounding on our people and doing the face-to-face, we're going to have more time spent trying to get things done.
Yeah, just really quickly, there's a question about what's the key to the care consolidation conversation so it actually changes behavior. What we've done with our physicians is we've shown them the data saying 37% of referrals are coming out of our employed medical group. And then in the group setting, we have said, here's how many patient facing hours that you have. Here's how many patients you're actually seeing on a daily basis. And it was interesting because as we kind of started the conversation polled, Dr. X, tell me how many patients are you seeing every day? I see 40 patients every single day. Like, really? Okay. Well, let's look at the data. Well, I'm actually seeing 22 patients a day, but I'd like to see 40. And so that's in collaboration with our clinic leadership. It's in collaboration with our to the CMO, our entire leadership team saying, again, going back to that bilateral accountability, we know this practice is not sustainable. Here's the data. These are not there are numbers, but it's not something that administration came up with. This is the action. This is the actual numbers. So Dr. X, what are we going to do to change this so that you see the 40 patients that you want to see a day? Then it comes down to looking at schedules, those sorts of things, but they're at the table and involved in that conversation.
Awesome. Well, we're going to close. I know we could go on forever and ever. We have a couple more questions, but I think they've been answered roundabout ways. But we would love for you to, before you sign off, to put in the chat any aha moment you had, or maybe a piece of information that was the most useful takeaway for you today. We would appreciate that. Remember, our next webinar is March 16th, where we're going to talk about the reason your growth strategies fail, where we're going to have an executive from Beacon Health talk to you about their growth strategies, and they're very well known for their innovation in the health system. We appreciate you joining today. If you need any information, feel free to contact me. There is my contact information. Devon and Dr. Finley, just want to thank you so much for your insight. And we've got lots of awesome feedback from our attendees about how informative it was.
Thank you, Tammy. Devon.
Thanks for the opportunity, everybody.
Okay, take care.